In this video, we're going to talk about 3 tips for not feeling awkward while speaking while you lead worship. Coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com, your daily dose of practical worship leading tips. If you want to find those tips, head over to Instagram or Facebook at leadingworshipwell, where I'm posting new worship leading tips every single day. But you're here on YouTube, so go ahead, hit subscribe down below, and let's get into it, because today we're talking about speaking while leading worship, and more specifically, feeling awkward while you speak while leading worship. Because let's face it, it's sort of awkward enough and uncomfortable enough and nerve-wracking enough to just be in front of people playing music, even if we're like in the background playing guitar, you're worried about your mistakes, whatever. There's that element of leading worship, but we also know that leading worship doesn't just have a musical side, it also has the spiritual leadership side, where we need to speak to the people that we're leading. And public speaking is like one of the most common fears of people. I'm pretty sure that's the stat. I don't think I just made that up. You might be afraid of speaking in front of people, and that can lead us to feel awkward. And so I want to show you how to overcome that today and lead your church with confidence. Speak to your church with confidence, because isn't that what we want? Like, what you're saying probably isn't bad. What you're saying is probably leading your church well, but I want you to feel confident as you're doing it so you can lead even better. We want to be leaders who lead well, who lead confidently. So before we get into these 3 tips for not feeling awkward while speaking while leading worship, I want to hear from you. Be a little vulnerable. On a scale from 1 to 10, how awkward or uncomfortable do you feel when you speak while leading worship? 1 is like, man, I am so confident in my speaking. Things just flow out so eloquently. I feel so good all the time. 10 is like, I think I'm going to throw up or pass out if I have to speak in front of my church. Where do you fall on a scale from 1 to 10? How awkward or uncomfortable do you feel when you speak while leading worship? Let me know. Leave a number down in the comments below. Maybe tell me a little bit more about it, and I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks so much for leaving your vulnerable answer down below. Or maybe you're like, man, I'm on 1. I'm great at this. I don't even need to watch this video. Keep watching it. I think there'll be a little bit of value in it for you. But let's get into these 3 tips for how to not feel awkward while speaking, while leading worship. The first thing is this. If you want to feel confident in what you say while leading worship, it's so easy to do this. Prepare in advance. Prepare in advance what you want to say. Know what you want to say. Just like you wouldn't show up to do the musical side of leading worship without practicing the songs in advance, don't show up to do the spiritual leadership talking side of worship leading without preparing in advance and knowing what you're going to say. So practice your speaking transitions. 99% of not feeling awkward while speaking or anything in life really, is being confident in what you're saying by preparing ahead of time. That's all it takes to be confident, is to say, hey, I put in the preparation. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm going to say. I know how I'm going to deliver it. There still might be a little bit of uncomfortableness there. We'll cover that in these following tips. But for now, just focus on preparing. And maybe you hear that and you're like, I've heard that before. But here's the thing, Spencer. I don't know how to prepare. Well, that's all right. I've got you covered. I did a whole series on what to say while leading worship. You can check it out right there. I'll leave it in the description below. This is like 2 hours of training on what to say while leading worship. I take you through from the beginning of the service all the way to the end, and I will show you step by step how to prepare, what to say. And whenever you know you've got like this method that you can follow, it's going to allow you to speak confidently, because you're going to know what to say, and you're going to know when to say it, and you're going to know how to say it. So just keep that in mind. Preparation, the more you prepare, the more confident you will be, because you know what you're doing. So simple as that. Prepare in advance. Let's move on to number 2. The second tip is this. Speak with your normal voice. There's a phenomenon in worship leading where we speak with this different voice. whenever we're leading worship and we talk in a whispered voice and we're, like that. You know what I'm talking about. And maybe you hear other worship leaders talking that way, and maybe that's legitimately how they talk. But I think a lot of times we get pulled into this trap that this is what I have to sound like whenever I'm speaking in front of my church. I have to speak with a certain tone. I have to use certain words. I have to use words that I would never use in a normal conversation with somebody one-on-one in my church. Like, don't do that. That's pressure on yourself that you don't need. Your church doesn't need you to be some picture of what you think a worship leader should look like. Your church needs you to be you. Your church needs you to lead them in the way that you authentically would. Imagine if you were speaking to someone one-on-one. Like if you got together with someone at your church for coffee, how would you speak to them? If they were like, I've got this going on in my life right now, and I need to hear some truth about God that's going to fix my mind on the right thing. What would you tell them? You wouldn't use these big theological words that you hardly even know what they mean. You wouldn't change the tone of your voice. Just speak in a normal voice. What is your normal voice? Don't be ashamed of it. Maybe you don't speak as eloquently as you hear some other people speak. That's okay. Your church would rather have you be you than have you be what you think a worship leader should sound like. So just be yourself. And I actually did a video on this as well called How to Sound Authentic Whenever You Are Speaking. So go check that out if you want more information on that. But don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself to sound a certain way. I think that's a lot of the awkwardness that we experience. We compare ourselves to other worship leaders and we say, I don't sound like that. And so I'm not as good of a speaker as they are. And so I feel awkward because I want to get to that level, but I'm not there yet. So just be yourself. Imagine you're just talking to one person, and yes, you're talking to a whole room full of people, but just think about that in terms of your tone of voice and the language that you use. You don't have to use these big words. You don't have to impress anybody. You just have to lead them and point them to the goodness of God. And finally, tip number 3, you're not going to like this, so don't get mad at me, but tip number 3 for not feeling awkward while speaking, while leading worship, is to just give it time. Anything in life takes time to get used to be confident in. Think about how you play your instrument or how you sing or whatever you do on your worship team. Like, it takes time to feel confident in that because it's a skill that you build. Skills take time to build. Speaking in front of your church or in front of any group of people is a skill that you need to build. And how do you do it? Well, it's kind of hard because with an instrument, you can just sit in your bedroom and practice, or at your house and practice by yourself and nobody has to hear it. But if you want to actually improve the skill of speaking in front of people, you got to get in front of people. So just force yourself to do it, and you're going to get more confident in it over time. You're going to start developing the system of how you come up with what to say and how you deliver what you say, and you're going to find your voice. But you're never going to find your voice if you are too afraid to do it. So step up to the microphone, have something prepared in advance, speak in your normal voice, and do it. And then do it again. And then do it the next Sunday. And do it over and over again. And I guarantee you, if you do it for, let's say, 3 months consistently, that's 12 Sundays, right? If you do it for 12 Sundays and compare yourself in your confidence level of where you are at the end of those 12 Sundays compared to where you were at the beginning of those 12 Sundays, you're going to be so far ahead in your confidence than where you started. But the only way to get there is to actually put in the work and give it time to develop. This is a skill we need to develop. We need to force ourselves to do it. So do it over and over and over again, and you won't feel as awkward anymore. And maybe at the end of those 12 weeks, it'll still feel a little awkward. But guess what? Give it 12 more weeks. There's 52 Sundays in a year. I don't recommend leading every single Sunday a year, but that's a lot of Sundays to practice your speaking transitions and practice speaking in front of people. So do that. Give it time, and you will be more confident. I know this was a shorter video today, but I really think that this is important because we put so much unnecessary pressure on ourselves to sound a certain way whenever we're speaking while leading worship. And so I just want to give you the tools to speak confidently and to understand what a good speaking transition actually is and what it sounds like, and it's not what you think it is because you watch some Bethel service and you heard how they speak and you're like, they're amazing and I wish I could speak that way. Like, yes, they say some good things, but you don't have to speak that way for it to be good. It's okay if you just speak like however you speak. That's perfectly acceptable and probably better for the context of your church. So lean into who you are. It's going to be okay. If you do want more tools of how to actually prepare those speaking transitions, once again, whole series on it down in the description below. Go check it out. Also, if you're just looking for some general tips for how to improve your worship leading, I put together a free audio training called 5 Tips to Instantly Improve Your Worship Leading. In the audio training, I share with you 5 tips to instantly improve your worship leading. So these are just 5 things that you've got to know, and if you know them and you make the effort to do them, they will improve your worship leading. So there's another way to feel more confident, is by just improving your worship leading in general. So go check that out, link in the description below for that as well. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me today. Until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.